Hey everybody, it is Miss Jamie. So this video is going to be all about climate change because we are going to be doing the climate change challenge. Okay, so what this is something, a patch that the Girl Scouts set requirements out, and they gave us a specific amount of time, a couple of months to complete these requirements. And I was going to do it with me and Penelope because it's a lot of sciencey things. And I just thought, since I was already doing this little slideshow for us, that I would share it with you guys. So if you want to earn the patch, it'll be a lot easier. So I'm going to just show you what it is first. So let me share my screen here. Okay, so this right here is the website where you could get the requirements, and it says Girl Scout Climate Challenge. Connect with your community to spread awareness about climate change. So here is the patch, what it looks like. It's got a little polar bear on it, and it says complete 10 activities based on grade level. So right here, you will find the PDF of the requirements. So what I did was, here are the requirements, and you can see that they have a lot of options for each part. I just kind of picked and chose what I wanted to do, what worked in this slideshow. You guys can definitely pick and choose if you want to do this on your own. We will not be purchasing the patches as a troop. They're $1.50, but this is going to kind of be something that you guys can do on your own. So let's get started. Also, with this age group, it's going to be slightly boring. So I have Penelope listening over here, and she's coloring. And so she's going to be coloring, maybe get a snack or something like that, because it's a little bit boring. So here we go. Okay. So the first thing we need to learn is what climate change is. So in order to know that, we have to first know the difference between weather and climate. So weather is a specific event like a rainstorm or a hot day, thunderstorm, all of that stuff. That is weather, and it usually happens over a few hours, days, or weeks. Climate is the average weather pattern over a longer period of time, like 20 or 30 years. So we look at, the last 20 or 30 years, and we're like, what was, the weather like? And that is our climate. So what climate change is, and this is the big thing that we're working on, is when weather patterns in certain areas change over time. So when we see the weather kind of start to be averaging something different, that's what we call climate change. And most scientists these days do believe that climate change is happening, and it's making our weather a lot more extreme. So it's causing rising seas, stronger storms, and shifting habitats for the animals. It is natural for changes to occur over time, but we do believe that it's happening more right now because of human activity, what people are doing. And this can cause problems for people, plants, and animals. So we have to also figure out the difference between the difference between climate change and carbon. This is part of the requirements on our little sheet here. So plants, they make their own food. They take the carbon out of the air and they use it along with water and energy from the sun to make food. Plants store about half of the carbon that they take in, and then the other half is released back into the air. So when the plants eventually die, the carbon that they had stored gets released into the air too. So this is called the carbon cycle. However, when forests and trees get cut down and other plants die, then not as much carbon is taken out of the atmosphere. So it really kind of messes up the balance when we're cutting down all of these trees. So communities, countries, and businesses measure their carbon footprint. So the carbon footprint refers to the amount of carbon dioxide, or CO2, that is caused by human activity that gets released into the environment. So factories, cars, planes, and other technological innovations create carbon dioxide. So all of these things that we are doing is creating this greenhouse gas. And that's a big reason that the climate is changing. The bigger the carbon footprint, the more greenhouse gases are being released into the atmosphere. They trap heat from the sun and cause the earth to get hotter and hotter and hotter. When this happens, glaciers melt, and then our water levels are rising. In the last few hundred years, the Earth's temperature has gone up by about 2 degrees Fahrenheit, which doesn't sound like a very big number, but it's definitely enough to hurt people, plants, and the animals and the planet. Okay, so now we know what climate change is. What can we do to help? And this is where the challenge comes in. So here's the fun part. We can't solve climate change on our own. We have to work with others. Everyone has a role to play. Individuals, communities, businesses, and countries can all help stop climate change. Together, we can reduce the amount of pollution and prevent even worse climate change from happening. People can reduce their carbon footprint in many different ways. We can refill a water bottle or use a cup instead of disposable water bottles. And this is something that we were talking about even with our Girl Scout meetings. Instead of us buying the plastic bottles for you guys every single meeting, we're going to bring our own water bottles. And that just helps. That little bit, that little change can really, really help. Something else we can do is we can turn off unused lights or walk or ride a bike instead of driving, because when we drive a car, the emissions are coming out. Now, we don't always have a choice with that one, but if we do have a choice, we should choose to walk instead of drive. We can reduce food waste and use fewer plastic and paper products. And we can use showers and toilets that need less water. Okay, so it seems crazy. It's not in the best order here, but this is clicking off some of those boxes that we have to learn for to meet our requirements. So we are going to just talk real quickly about what the scientific process is. A lot of you guys may not know. I know Penelope doesn't know what the scientific process is. So what that is that's a process that scientists and people that are doing experiments and stuff use to find the answer to something, an experiment. So the first thing is our question. We have to figure out, what do we want to learn from this experience? Then we do our hypothesis, and this is our prediction of what you think will happen and why you think that. Number 3 is materials, and this is, we're going to list everything that we're going to use for our experiment. The next thing is the procedure, and this is the detailed list of all the steps or directions needed to conduct the experiment. Number 5 is data. So data is the charts, the graphs, the tables, the sketches, the photographs. This is what we are collecting from the experiment, and it shows our results. And then the last part of the scientific process is the conclusion. So you write what happened in your experiment, and then you look back at your hypothesis and see if your prediction was right. And that's the scientific process. Okay, so now we're going to talk about climate change and pollinators. So if you're listening to this, this is a good time for a question and answer. What is a pollinator? So take a moment, think about it, write it down. You can think about it too. Okay, so pollinators play a vital role in plant production, making them fundamental to supporting healthy ecosystems. Pollinators help spread the pollen of plants and allow them to reproduce, and then the plants reward the pollinators with nectar. Humans also rely on pollinators for survival, as we rely on plants as a food source and as medicine. So pollinators are things like bees and butterflies that fly around and go from flower to flower to flower to flower. They help pollinate and spread all of our seeds and, allow these plants to grow again. Okay, so that's how they really, really help. However, the changing climate impacts the pollinators because it's shifting the growing the growing and blooming seasons, and potentially weakens the plant population that pollinators depend on. Also, warming temperatures have altered migrating species and affects things like butterflies. So a lot of times the butterflies are migrating now when they normally wouldn't, and then they're not around to pollinate these plants. So it's actually a really big deal because it's shifting our ecosystem. How does climate change impact different communities? And this is another one of our little bullet points here. And I know I'm going fast. You guys can definitely pause the video, slow it down, look at something more in depth, or even pick different bullet points. So we're hitting these big ones here. So rural communities experience erosion, mudslides, and flooding when trees or other native plants are removed or die. This affects farm and ranch land, and we know with our farm and our ranches, that's how we get a lot of our food. So if it's affecting these things, then we may not have as much food. Climate change also impacts poor and vulnerable people more than wealthy or privileged people. People in less industrialized places, so places that maybe aren't as grown with buildings and stuff like that, they've done the least to cause the climate change, but they suffer the most from the effects. Black, Indigenous, and people of color are more at risk to experience heat, pollution, and other impacts of climate change. So now one of our bullet points is invasive species. So let's take a quick moment here, and this is our question and answer. What is an invasive species? So take a moment, answer the question in the comments. Okay, so invasive species are animals or plants from another region of the world that doesn't belong in this new environment. They can be introduced to an area by ship water, accidental release, and most often by people. Invasive species can lead to the extinction or destroying the native plants and animals. It destroys our biodiversity, which affects our ecosystem, and it also can permanently alter habitats. And habitats are where the plants and animals live. So here is a list. This is just something you guys can look at, but this is Virginia invasive species. So all of the species here on this list are things that aren't really supposed to be here and are not native to this area. So I'm just going to name a couple of them. Garlic mustard, oriental bittersweet, cinnamon vine, autumn olive, Chinese privet. I actually had one of those in my last house, Japanese honeysuckle, yellow flag. So all of those things are not native and can cause our environment or our ecosystem to mess up a little bit. So those are what we call invasive species. Here are some of our local conservation groups, and we may at some point work in the future with them. Newport News Green, you can go to the website here, Hoffler Creek Wildlife Foundation and Preserve, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, James River Association, and the Elizabeth River Project. And these each kind of do different things, but what they're trying to do is to conserve the environment, to keep our native plants and animals happy and in business and to keep everything clean. Okay, so challenge part. So let's reduce our household's carbon footprints. One thing that we can do, compost your food waste if possible. Question and answer. What does it mean to compost your food? And what is compostable? Okay, so when we compost our food, it means we don't just throw our waste away. We can keep it and put it in a compost bin, and it eventually turns into really, really rich soil for our plants to grow in. You can compost fruits, vegetables, hair. I know that's a weird one. I just learned that one the other day. Stuff like that. You cannot compost meat and plastic and stuff like that. So it's got to be something that turns into soil. Another thing that you guys can do is turn off the water when you're not using it, like when you're brushing your teeth and the water is just running. So get your toothbrush wet, turn it off, brush, and then turn it back on when you're ready. So that way we're not just wasting all this water. All of the water is just going down a drain. Another thing you could do is bring your own reusable shopping bags when you shop. That just reduces the amount of plastic that is going on. When you leave a room, turn the lights off, unplug your electronic devices when they're not in use, and recycle everything that you can. So look at this list and come up with 2 things that you are going to challenge yourself with doing, and write it in the comments. Here is, because we're doing this local stuff here. So this is a shore protection project that Newport News has. And you can see here, let's see, shore protection likely. They're going to need shore protection there. And it just kind of shows you the map of the open waters, the tidal wetlands, non-tidal wetlands, and where they know they're going to have shore protection. And here is Hampton. And you guys can see Hampton here. You can just look at this map because some of you guys are in Newport News and some of you guys are in Hampton. Share hope. Okay, so we are going to hopefully work on this. If enough people watch this and do the challenge with me and Penelope, then we can do this part as a troop. But choose a part of climate change that's important to our community, research and plan a project. You can build a rain garden, compost, clean up a river. We could do a litter cleanup together, or just do a video to promote awareness and then share it with the community. Here are some extra projects that you could do. You could plant a tree. You could go to a local community event to help the planet. You can make a map, art, or model of your community resources. You can take field notes at your environment or explore natural habitats and build a home for bugs and animals. Or you can explore land, air, water, and biodiversity at a local garden. So you need to pick, at least, let's see, a couple of these. I'll give you guys specifics on what you would need to pick to do yourself, or, you know, if you guys want to try to connect with me, then we can do one of these or a couple of these together. And that is it, you guys. That hits most of our requirements here. And so I want you guys, if you would like to comment here, let me know, answer some of the questions. And if you are interested in taking this project a little bit further as a troop, you can reach out to me or Miss Holly or Miss Kat, and we can figure out something to do together. Otherwise, I'm going to post the little PDF of requirements, but once you watch this video, you will have hit most of them. So, all right, you guys, hope you enjoyed this video and you know a little bit more about climate change now. Bye.